All
right, well, thanks to all of you for joining us. We've got over 250 people that have registered for today's webinar. And this particular topic is one that I think almost anybody who has ever been in a job search identifies with. Simply because there's one question that absolutely nobody can answer when it comes to a job search, and that's how long is it going to take? There may be people out there that tell you that they can guarantee you a job in 60 days, 90 days, 180 days. But the fact is, there are so many variables that go into a job search, particularly an effective one, that are out of your control. But what we're going to focus on today are on really on the things that you can control. I'm going to just share with you 8 ideas, but I've probably got 98 ideas. And I recognize a lot of the names that are with us today. Many of you are members of NSENG. Some of these may be somewhat familiar to you, but I'm focusing on things that I think absolutely can help you shorten that timeline to your next opportunity. So with that in mind, let me just cover a couple quick items with you. One is that I have muted everybody's microphone. So this is not going to be an opportunity for folks to ask questions, but you all can interact with each other on the chat if you choose. Depending upon whether or not we have any time at the end, if we do, I'm happy to take some chatted in questions. If you do have a question, what I do ask is that in the very first word of your question, put in all caps the word question so that I can identify it very easily from everything else that will be sitting in the chat. So for those of you that may not be members of NSENG, I encourage you to do so. We're the largest job search group in the United States. We have more than one member landing a new job every day of the week for the last 7 years. The membership is absolutely free. Just go to nsenginc.com. You're going to get 2 free webinar recordings from me, and of course, the opportunity to interact and network with a really diverse group of people. Separate and apart from the membership with NSENG, I also encourage you to go ahead and join our LinkedIn group. This is a great place where you can interact with folks, post on here. I have jobs that get posted here from time to time. And again, just another form of networking that's available to all of you. There's a lot of resources available through Enzeng. Okay, I have 20 online webinar recordings that are on demand. Each one of these is on a different job search topic, from ghosting to resumes, LinkedIn profiles, how to create strong emails and cover letters, to brain training. So I encourage you to go ahead and take a look at these on the website. Again, they are all available immediately. The next event that I'm going to hold will be a month from now. I'm going to hold it on Wednesday, the 20th of May, and it's going to be on 7 job search game changers, specific actions and tactics that you can take that can help give you a lot more visibility in your job search and single you out from the 300 and 400 other applicants that are going after jobs, but not just jobs that are advertised. One of the biggest opportunities, of course, and we'll discuss that briefly, are the hidden jobs that don't get out onto websites like LinkedIn and Indeed and Career Builder. So please go ahead and register for that event. I'll be posting that probably later today or tomorrow, but I will be sending out a follow-up email to all of you. If you're interested in being alerted whenever I post something on LinkedIn, and I typically post about twice a week, go to my profile, click on the bell, and you will be alerted every time I put something out there. Also, if you go into the search bar within LinkedIn, which is this area up in here, and just put in hashtag Marty Gilbert, you'll see a lot of different posts that I've put out there over the last several years. One thing I do want to mention, and this applies to all of you, this particular company applies to those of you that live in the state of Illinois. There is a government-funded program that's been around for a long time. It's called the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, oftentimes referred to as WIOA. Now, I partner with a company here in the state of Illinois by the name of Microtrain. They are a WIOA approved training company. And one of the great things about this program is that you can apply for and receive a grant at absolutely no cost to you for free training. This is money that's been set aside by the federal government every year for specifically for folks that are out of work and are looking for the next career opportunity. And just as an example, Microtrain has all different kinds of training programs that are available for you. They will work with you on applying for the grant and show you how to do that. And if you are approved, and oftentimes it's anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 worth of training that will cost you absolutely nothing because Microtrain will get paid by the government, which means they can provide the training to you at absolutely no cost. I encourage you to go to the special landing page that's been set up for us at microtrain.net/NSENG. Fill out the form, they will be alerted, and then they will reach out to you to set up a time to talk and help you apply for that grant. And we've had, well over 100 people within our group that have gotten training, typically on average about $8,000 worth of free training. And it's on topics that I think are absolutely valuable to many of you. So let's talk a bit about some of the key truths of a job search. One is, again, my belief, 90% of the job search is marketing. Okay, it's all about positioning, packaging, messaging, and targeting. We're going to talk a little bit in greater detail about that very early on in the presentation, but don't be fooled into thinking that the key to your next search is applying to as many online ads as you can and hoping for the best. That is absolutely not a job search strategy because when you do that, you aren't singling yourself out from anybody else. And we've seen a lot of postings being placed up on Indeed and on LinkedIn, and you can see, literally within a couple hours, there can be over 100 applicants. So that process is not a process to shorten your job search. Marketing yourself more effectively, and we'll talk about how to market yourself and the things that you need to do to differentiate yourself. That's what gets you more traction in the marketplace. You also need to have a process. Okay. It's real easy to go down a rabbit hole and spend countless hours on LinkedIn and not even remembering where you started from. But the fact is that less than 15% of all the hiring that takes place because of an advertised job. I'm going to repeat that because I think a lot of people have a misnomer here. A lot of folks think that all the jobs and the hiring that takes place because somebody placed an ad. And it's just not the case. And again, and I said hiring. The hiring that takes place is in large part because somebody was referred into a company or networked their way in, and somebody inside the company advocated on their behalf. You also need to, leverage all the different ways in which to create visibility for your background, and we'll talk a bit more about that. So when I think about how do you really just talk about the stages of a job search, and we can make this as complex as you want, but I think it's better just to think of it in the simplest of terms. The name of the game is visibility. Because if people don't know about you, they can't interview you, they can't hire you, they can't advocate on your behalf. So you've got to get this stage going early on in your search. And for those of you that have been looking for months, it's never too late to adopt this strategy. From visibility, you start to establish that credibility that gets you in the door and gets people talking about your background. And that's what ultimately leads to the engagement, which is what it's going to take for you to get interviews, to get networking referrals, to get considered for so many different roles. So I do a lot of polls on LinkedIn, and from time to time, I'll put questions out there, and they're all job search related. I did one not long ago where the poll that I put out there was which of the following four choices in your job search are the biggest challenges that you face? And I gave folks four things to choose from. They could only pick one: interviewing, expressing your value, networking, or managing your time. Now, I had over 330 people respond to it within a couple days. 15% said interviewing, 51% said expressing my value. To me, this is a huge problem because companies are looking for people that bring value to their organization. And if you can't express your value effectively in a way that people want to have a conversation with you, the chances of you getting an opportunity to have an interview are going to be diminished significantly. This is the single most important aspect of a job search. What is your value proposition? What separates you from all these other candidates that are being considered? And why is it that we should be, taking the time to have a conversation with you? No surprise that there were a fair number of folks that felt that networking was a big challenge. And of course, that is a very critical piece of your job search as well. I don't think a lot of people felt that managing their time was a big deal, but I can tell you, having spoken with so many job seekers, most people don't manage their time very well, and they spend an inordinate amount of their time on the things that are going to, deliver to them far less results. So these are the 8 different ways you can essentially try to compress that time. Again, nobody can promise you anything when it comes to how long it's going to take, but there are things in your immediate control that you can implement to help you shorten the possibility of not having a long drawn out search. We're going to go through all 8 of these. Let's take the first one. Start thinking of yourself like a new product launch. Now, I've been fortunate to introduce a lot of new products into the marketplace throughout my career. Early in my career, I worked in advertising. I moved to Japan and I was promoting to the United States and other parts of the country some very famous products that were coming out of Japan. The Sony Walkman, the VCR, the microwave oven. Of course, our clients included Toyota, Honda, and Nissan. Mitsubishi, Matsushita, Toshiba, Hitachi, all the camera companies. So I developed a really nice foundation and understanding of the marketing and advertising world, particularly from a written word standpoint. And what I have noticed, not only back then, but even, during the years I was with Motorola when we introduced the very first cell phone, people buy things based on a number of different aspects. There are a lot of folks that buy things on emotion. This is why at grocery stores at the cash register, they have things like Snickers and Mars bars and Milky Way sitting there. They're thinking, you might just reach out and grab one. People buy things based on referrals. They buy things because somebody has bought that product already and they said, you know what? This is great. Great. So you always are looking for people that can advocate on behalf of a product or service that you're interested in. Of course, advertising is a big part of the influence that manufacturers put out there when they're launching a new product. But when it comes down to it, value is the single most important aspect of a new product being successful in the marketplace. What am I getting for what I can afford to pay? The same is true of job seekers. Hiring companies, when they're looking at candidates, they know what their budget is. And oftentimes the range can be pretty flexible, but they want to try to find the best candidate who has the best fit for what they need to fill. And so you need to put yourself in the shoes of a hiring company. They want people that can fit within their parameters. So let's talk about a couple things. One is branding, and one is your value proposition. These are both really important to job seekers. So when we talk about branding statements, why are they important? Because they can stick in someone's head. You need to be able to label yourself so that when you have a networking meeting with somebody, they know, you know what? He's the person who brings order to chaotic technical projects. Or it's the marketing leader who at one time carried a sales bag and understands what it's like to be a salesperson out there and how to support them. No, she's the one who can translate data and analytics into business strategies. Or, this individual is a direct, indirect, and social selling champion. When you label yourself, it enables people in your network to advocate more effectively on your behalf because you've now given them a way in which to remember you by. But in job interviews, it's also a great way to get yourself more memorable. And being a memorable candidate is exceptionally important because many people are being interviewed. And in the process, you've got maybe five different people inside a firm that you end up interviewing with during a initial process. And they're all trying to remember who's who. Well, one way to make sure they connect your background with you yourself is through a branding statement. And that branding statement can be very powerful in helping people to know exactly what is your unique value. Now, when it comes to a value proposition, this is a little different. It gives you an opportunity to be a little bit more verbose. This is the section that sits at the top of your resume, right under all your contact information. And this has got to capture the interest of the reader because this is the area that gets read the most. Keep in mind that the average resume only gets 6 to 10 seconds of read time. It's not a lot of time. But the area that in most cases gets read most carefully is that value proposition up at the top. So I'm going to just share with you this one example. It happens to be from an HR executive that I had coached. And the value proposition that we came up for her was an HR leader who leverages technology and data to propel human capital improvement opportunities, orchestrates employee engagement programs, turnover analysis, potential risks, talent recruitment, and on, utilizes market research and best practices to drive change management, and has expertise in addressing HR challenges through mergers and acquisitions. What's important about this value proposition and the way that it's written are the words that I've highlighted here in red. Soft skills don't get you the job. Hard skills do. And so every one of these highlighted words is a hard skill. Leverages technology, human capital improvement, employee engagement programs, risk, talent recruitment, market research, change management, merger and acquisition activities. These are the kinds of things that companies are looking for that particular job that they were looking to fill. Every one of you has keywords that are pertinent to the kinds of jobs that you're trying to pursue. And I urge you all to stay away from those soft skills that do nothing more than take up space. Words like I'm self-motivated, I'm results-driven, I'm passionate, collaborative, energetic. These words do not differentiate you. And I don't care if they appear in a job description, they don't make you an outstanding candidate. These are the kinds of things. And again, the words are going to be different for somebody in project management versus sales, marketing, operations, and on and on. But when people start to fill these kinds of words into their value proposition, what it tells me is that you're really at a loss to differentiate yourself versus all these other candidates that we're considering. So why do companies prefer one candidate over another? Okay. And these are some of the issues that you need to be sensitive to when you're trying to differentiate yourself. Well, one of the easiest ways to eliminate candidates is if they don't have that industry experience, whether it's in IT, manufacturing, software, professional services. It's always easier and far less risky to go with an individual who comes from the industry that the hiring company comes from, because risk assessment is a big part of the hiring process. Companies are always looking for ways to mitigate their risk when it comes to choosing one candidate versus others. And one way to eliminate you immediately is if you don't have an industry experience under your belt. So one thing I always encourage people to do is prioritize first those companies that you want to work for that come from industries or tangential industries where you've been. Of course, storytelling is a huge part of any job seeker's efforts, and you got to have relevant stories that demonstrate a before and an after picture of the kind of impact that you've had in the business. Making yourself more likable is a really important part also once you get into the interview process, particularly if you're one of the finalists. If you're one of the two or three finalists in the process, we know that all of them can do the job. And more times than not, it's an issue of chemistry. Is this somebody I like? Is this somebody that I could see myself enjoying working with? And so the likability factor comes into play. You've always got to make a strong and dynamic impression And of course, if you can get somebody on the inside becoming your advocate, you're way ahead of most other people. So number two, you've got to optimize your resume and your LinkedIn profile. So what's the difference between the two? Very simply, in my mind, the resume is about less is more. This is the art of copywriting. This is where I grew up as an advertising copywriter. How do you say all the most important things about that product or service or about you as a job seeker in the fewest words possible? Because the average reader is very lazy. I'm a great example of that. I always look to cut to the chase and try to just, how is this person able to condense their background in a way that very quickly I can see what they're all about. Now, a LinkedIn profile works on just the opposite premise in my mind. It works on the premise of more is more. You want to load it up with more and more of the right keywords and key phrases so that you can get found. When people are looking at, LinkedIn profiles, they're going into the back end of LinkedIn, they're plugging in the key skills, and the people that will rank the highest are the ones that have the most keyword matches. And if you don't have enough of that content sitting in your profile, even though you may be the best candidate for that job, you may never get any visibility whatsoever. And this is why, in many cases, the best and most qualified candidates don't even get interviews because they haven't done the necessary things in their profiles to stand out so that they score high enough to get that initial phone screen. Of course, you've got to emphasize all of your achievements. And one of the easiest ways is to think, what was the challenge I faced? What were the actions I took? And what was, the result or impact of what I did? The trick is, how do you get that down to a bullet point of only 2 lines? And one thing that will help you ensure that you talk about achievements is start every bullet point with a verb in the past tense. Developed, orchestrated, created, drove, initiated any number of things. This will force you to talk in terms of things that you've accomplished. Here's just a decent example of a typical format for a resume. Okay, if you have a branding statement, this is a great place to put it up there. This happens to be an individual who comes out of the healthcare environment, who also happens to have a nursing background. Look at this individual's value proposition summary. Okay, when we first started working on it, it didn't look much like this, but the words that I've underlined are the hard skills, right? Data and analytics, performance improvement, operational challenges, business cases, go no go decisions, and on and on. And then underneath it, we listed out some additional key competencies. This is a great way to create a strong beginning to your story. And like I said, 6 to 10 seconds, not a lot of time, but the area that's going to get the most attention is this right here. What you also want to make sure that you do is that underneath your company name and location, include a one-liner that describes what they do. Okay, maybe how big they are, if that's information that can be shared. But not everybody is familiar with every company you've worked for, and it's worthwhile to just take a one-liner in here and help people understand what this company does and who they serve, for example, and then get right into your achievements. When it comes to the LinkedIn profile, this is all about creating a great first impression because it's the one opportunity that people have a chance to see you physically on your profile and to develop a very strong first impression. If you don't have a decent photograph, it's going to turn people off. It's going to tell people that you don't care about the way that you represent yourself. And you've got to have a strong banner here that helps people immediately, from a visual standpoint, understand what you're all about. Now, each one of these individuals are not graphic designers. They're not artists. They've lifted, in some cases, artwork from other sources. In some cases, they've created things on their own. But you can see in each one of these cases, there's enough visual interest that people can very quickly understand what they're about, whether it's project management, sales and marketing, strong writing skills, or data and analytics. But you got to create that first impression because if they don't like what they see up here, the chances of them going further down the page are going to be very minimal. And also keep in mind that your headline, this area up in here, LinkedIn allows you to have 220 characters. There's a lot you can do with that. And that's where your keywords need to appear. So how do you know what your keywords are? Go ahead and grab 3 or 4 or 5 different job descriptions, highlight the most important skills in those job descriptions, and you're going to see some similarities from, time to time within these various job descriptions. And those that you find appearing time and time again, those are the words that you want to make sure are coming through in your profile, and you got to insert them into your headline. One of the things that a lot of people forget to do is to create a target company list and target individuals inside every one of those companies. Because when we launch new products, there are very few products out there that appeal to every single person in every walk of life. Just doesn't exist. There's very few exceptions. And the same is true for you as somebody who's in a job search. You're not going to appeal to every single company. But remember my comment earlier on, one of the easiest ways to eliminate people, particularly if you're in a customer-facing role, but even when you're content, you're competing against other folks in a non-customer-facing role, whether it's IT, HR, operations, people that have that industry experience always have a leg up over folks that don't have it. So what you want to do is take the industries where you've had background, list out all of the companies that you can think of. And they don't have to necessarily be physically located in the city where you're located. There are still plenty of states across this country where people are working entirely remote or in hybrid situations. So what I encourage you to do is start first with those companies that are in industries where you've worked or in industries that surround those industries. Prioritize those that are in your home city, but then start to expand outside of that and create a hit list of the most important people inside those firms that you want to market yourself directly to. This is a key to a successful job search because just like any product, we market to the audiences that we think will have a propensity to buy our product or service. The same is true for you as a job seeker. And so you've got to put together essentially your own database of companies, people in those firms, and because in the end, you want to be emailing them to introduce yourself, whether they have a job or don't have an advertised job for you. Because even though something might not be available today, that could change in 2 weeks or in 2 months. Keep tabs on who you've sent emails out to and follow up. Number 4, this is an area where I get a lot of pushback. Now, I use the term emails and cover letters very interchangeably. They are, think of it always as an email. Okay, it's not an attached cover letter. But when I told you early on that 90% of the job search is marketing, 90% of that marketing is your ability to write well. I see it time and time again. And it's really important to ultimately write these emails. Okay, so if when you apply to a job online, there might be an opportunity to upload an email. But even so, you should be emailing directly to other people inside that firm above and beyond what you've applied to online. Now, I hear a lot of excuses why people don't write them. Takes me 1 to 3 hours to customize each one. The applicant tracking system is ultimately going to decide who gets an interview and who doesn't. So why should I bother writing an email cover letter? I hear that cover letters don't get read because people in recruiting don't have the time to read them and they don't want to read them. I hear people talk about most online ads won't allow me to insert a cover letter. Excuses, but not good ones, and I'll explain why. There've been a lot of studies done on this topic. One of the most recent ones was done, and the question that was simply asked was, how important is a cover letter to you in making your decision as to whether or not you want to interview an applicant? And they asked a lot of hiring managers. And two-thirds of them said that it is important or fairly important or very important. And that's significant. But I'll add yet another study that was done also right around the same time that showed that only about 1 in 3 job seekers bother to write emails, while 83% of hiring managers have said, I want to see them. Why do you think they want to see them? Well, for one thing, it's going to enable them to see how you communicate. But the most important thing is what advantages it gives you. And I'm going to share with you just a few of them. Okay. When you write an email, again, above and beyond applying online, or if you want to get the attention of a company who doesn't have any online, ads, no open positions, but that should never stop you. And this is where the email is so powerful because it can do things that a resume and a LinkedIn profile simply can't do. One, it creates a great impression because it says that you're proactive, and we know that most job seekers aren't sending them. Two, it's easy to read because they're fairly short. A resume can be 2 or 3 pages for probably for most of you. LinkedIn profiles can get very long, but this really cuts through all of the nonsense and says, I'm going to give you a few examples of things from my background that are relevant to that job you're trying to fill or to your company. It's the one opportunity you have to control the story before you meet anybody inside that firm. Resume doesn't enable you to control the story. Neither does a LinkedIn profile because a cover letter or an email is giving you the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm giving you a couple examples that are pertinent to this job. People are looking for proof. It enables you to connect things in your past and that you've done, that you've accomplished, to the key, most important requirements of the job. It demonstrates your ability to communicate well. Well, when you send an email, of course, it get forwarded to so many people, not just inside the company, but many people will take that and forward it to folks they know in other companies who might be looking for somebody with your background. It demonstrates you're really enthused about this company, okay, about the job. It enables you to stand out from everybody else because most people aren't writing them. It opens up doors in a way that a resume and a LinkedIn profile can't because in a resume, you're one of 300 other people who are a piece of paper sitting in a stack. It also enables your network to help you far more efficiently. And I do a whole separate hour-and-a-half presentation on how to network more effectively. And this is a key part of it because when you provide your network, your first-degree connections with some of the most important things in your past that are relevant to a company of interest to you that they happen to either be working in or are connected to somebody in, all they have to do is put a one-liner or two-sentence comment on top of your email, forward it on to the right people inside that firm, and now you're off and running. Too many people tell me that they have, 20 networking meetings over a period of 7, 8 days. And the question I ask most of them is, tell me how the meetings ended. And what I hear from a lot of job seekers is now they know what I'm looking for. They know what my background's all about, so that if they come across something that they think's of interest to me, they're going to reach out to me and let me know. And my response to them, unfortunately, is you just got the kiss of death. That is not going to happen. It will be very unique individuals that will reach back because you have not given them the tool to advertise and promote your background to others. And that's where this different approach to networking can make such a huge difference in the results that you get because it's not enough to have a lot of connections. And I have a lot of connections on LinkedIn. I've got 30,000 LinkedIn connections, but those connections are of no value to me if I don't know how to enable them to help me. And this is one of the great things about networking and LinkedIn as a combined, set of assets, because when you've got that ability to see exactly who is connected to who inside various companies that you're interested in, you can now give them the tools so that you don't have to take up much of any of their time. People can write 1 or 2 sentences in 2 or 3 minutes, and their job is done, and they've done something really nice for you, and then you can take it from there. Now, Remember, I said early on, a lot of people complain because if they write one, it's gonna mean dedicating anywhere from 1 to 3 hours to write it in a custom fashion because the emails do have to be customized. One of the things that I do is I teach people how to write highly tailored email cover letters in less than 10 minutes. I've got a 90-minute webinar recording on it on this very topic that instructs you. It's called Resumes Tell, but Cover Letters Sell. It's a very foolproof way in which to get the word out to many people inside a firm without having to constantly reinvent the wheel. But it's going to be very significant for the person on the other end because you've now tailored it to their needs. Number five, I don't want anybody who is in talent acquisition to take offense to this comment. But the fact is if you are really serious about your job search and you are not looking for a job in talent acquisition, then the last place to go is talent acquisition inside a company. They don't have the budget, they don't own the decision making, and they don't have much of any influence when it comes to hiring. So I can tell you, I've coached so many people that have gotten rejected by the applicant tracking system within 15 or 20 minutes, and I've still been able to get them interviews because we go around those systems. They are nothing more than a piece of software or an individual who's got a checklist. But the people that have the power are the hiring manager. In this case, it might be a director of sales, but that's not the only person that you want to be emailing. You want to email their peers. It might be somebody in operations, product development, marketing, finance. It could be going to 5 or 6 different people. That's why having that email customized that takes you no more than 10 minutes to create, and then being able to send it out to several people inside every firm, this becomes a copy and paste exercise so that you get both customization and speed virtually overlapping. And typically you have to choose one or the other. This is a way to get both without having to expend any incremental effort. This is an approach that has worked not only for me when I was in job searches, but for so many people that I've coached because the name of the game, remember, is visibility. And you got to get visible with people that have influence, people that are in the sphere of hiring. And it typically doesn't come down to just one person. You've got to access the hidden job market. And I said earlier on, okay, that about 75% of all the hiring does not take place because there was a position that was advertised on LinkedIn or Indeed or Career Builder or ZipRecruiter. The hiring takes place in more times than not because somebody inside the firm networked you in. Okay. In fact, I think these numbers are vastly understated. Headhunters account, quite honestly, probably for less than 1% of all the hiring that takes place here in the United States. They just, these are executive recruiters, external talent recruiters, and companies can't afford to pay 33% of someone's first year salary for every position they're trying to fill. So that's why headhunters are typically trying to fill only VP and C-level positions in most cases. So this networking and internal referrals is probably more on the order of 70% of all the hiring that takes place because somebody, got networked in or got referred into a company. There are so many jobs out there that are not being advertised, and you've got to access them. And that's why I am a huge advocate of promoting yourself, not only to companies that have advertised jobs, but when you put together your target company list, you're going to find that most of them maybe don't have advertised jobs right now. That should never stop you from sending that email that you can create in 10 minutes out to 4 and 5 different people inside every one of those firms. This is where you start to get traction. This is where you start to get people talking about your background. This is where you might get an exploratory conversation that otherwise would never take place. Too many people, are spending an inordinate amount of their time simply going, you know what, why should I, send emails out to companies that don't have advertised jobs? Well, there's a lot of companies that have decided not to advertise. Instead, they're paying their own employees $1,000 to $2,000 if they can network or refer somebody in who ends up getting hired. It's much less expensive, but more importantly, People who refer folks into a company end up referring people who become employees that stay with companies longer. The statistics bear it out. And that's what companies want. They want people that are going to have a long enduring career in a firm. Number seven is you've got to launch a direct marketing campaign. Okay. It's kind of tying together some of the things we talked about here. It enables you to position yourself. Why you? Enables you to brand yourself. Package your skills. Okay. Because you're going to find that there's probably 5 to 8 key skills that candidates have to have. You've got to be able to demonstrate that you've done those and you've done them well. You've got to have that target audience, which means target companies and then a group of individuals inside every firm that you want to be getting your messaging to, whether it's through somebody in your network or you going in cold with emails. I can tell you, I've gotten many jobs myself by sending in cold emails when I didn't have anybody in my network many years ago, because most people weren't doing it. And of course, with a strong email, you capture that engagement with people on the receiving end. Your ability to write well, both online and offline, is so important, to the entire process. In the end, you're promoting your value, you're connecting with people that are influential. You've got to get that engagement with the decision makers, and ultimately in the interview process, there's a fair amount of selling that takes place. Okay. And if you're confident, okay, and you have adequately prepared, and one of the best ways to prepare for interviews is to just take a simple Excel spreadsheet. On the left-hand column, put all the key requirements of the job. There might be 7, 8, 10 of them. And on the right-hand side, jot down a few words alongside each one of those key requirements with a few words that remind you of the story that you're going to tell. Because just like I said, resumes tell, but cover letters sell. Resumes tell, but stories sell. And your ability to be able to persuade people through things in your past that are relevant to that job are so critical. Here's how the process essentially unfolds. Remember, I said the single most important part of a job seeker's background is their value proposition. That's got to be well written, and it should, for most of you, probably going to be somewhere between 70 and 95 words. It sits right at the top of your resume. And then, of course, you've got the resume, the LinkedIn profile, your target company list, and your individuals. Once you have all of these things in place and you're happy with the way that they depict you, now you're ready to create engagement. You're ready to create activity, whether it's through emails, whether it's through posting on LinkedIn groups. And by the way, you can join up to 100 LinkedIn groups. These groups are great because they are the audiences that you're trying to reach. These are groups by job title, by industry, by geographic location, and combinations of these. And so if you are not on LinkedIn groups today, I encourage you to do so because this is a great place to become a more active participant on LinkedIn and the platform with the audiences that you want to get visibility with. It's not enough to have a great LinkedIn profile. You got to be active on the platform. And so there's nothing wrong with commenting on people's LinkedIn posts, but become a poster yourself. Post once a week. Put something out there, whether you decide to write it or it's an article you've seen and you provide some commentary to it. If people like what you've said, one of the things they're going to do is come back and look at your LinkedIn profile. And getting more and more LinkedIn profiles is such an important part of any job search. For those of you that are in active searches right now, if you are active in your search, you've got to be getting at least 5 profile views a day. So you can go up to your LinkedIn profile, you can, click on your homepage and then you'll see your picture in the upper left. And down below that, it's going to tell you how many profile views you've gotten over the last 90 days. And if that number isn't at least 450, you're not visible enough on the platform. Email cover letters, videos are a great way to create more visibility for your background. Um, Networking groups, okay, and we've got a great one here, but one thing that you can do is create small ad hoc groups with other folks. where different people from different disciplines can get together and when you're not competitive. One great way to get visibility is through snail mail, quite honestly. People just don't send, physical mail anymore. But when you do, it gets read. Joining associations. There are some business Facebook groups that are certainly, worth exploring. And picking up the phone and calling somebody inside a company today is easier than ever in terms of getting them because so many people are still tethered to their laptops. They're working remote. They've got their cell phone there, and they're far more reachable because they don't have near as many interruptions as they had when they were working in an office every day. So these are the kinds of things that can make a huge difference. The last thing is really attitudinal. You've got to be willing to take chances. Okay, I have been a big chance taker in my life. It has resulted in many exceptional things for my career. I'll just share a couple stories with you real quick. I was interviewing for a chief marketing officer role with a sports data company here in the Chicago area. Ended up interviewing with a number of people of all the vice presidents in the firm and the founder of the company, and they got it down to two of us. And I got a phone call from the founder who came back to me and said, "Look, I'm really sorry to tell you that you weren't selected. We went with the other individual." And I said, "Well, if you have a few minutes, I'd love to come on in and just have a quick conversation with you." And he said, "Sure." So I went into his office. We got together, and I said, "You know what? I appreciate that you've made a decision. I think I was the right candidate for the role. I had all the key skills and most importantly, the experience you were looking for." And I said, "I would love to just get some candid feedback from you." And he said, "You know what?" He said, "The decision wasn't all that difficult." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "We all decided that this job wasn't enough of a challenge for you and that you probably would have left within 6 to 9 months." And I said, "Okay, well, I appreciate that feedback, and I am glad that you were able to give me some very candid response." I said, "And you know what? If as I think about it, the job I really want in this company is your job." I said, "I want to run this firm." I said, "So if at any point in time you're ever interested in turning the reins over to someone else, I'd like to be first in line." 6 weeks later, he called me back. I came in for, a couple days of interviews, and by the end of the week, all the vice presidents were now reporting to me. Brought me in to run the firm for him. Some of you may be familiar with what this company has done because Michael Lewis ended up writing a book, and Brad Pitt ended up starring in a movie called Moneyball, which was about this company that I was running, who was providing all the data and analytics at the time to the Oakland A's baseball team. So they could find undervalued players. Very interesting company and very interesting story. Another one is a healthcare company that I was interviewing for, again, for a chief marketing role. And all of their leadership team were folks that had only grown up in healthcare. Okay, I had no healthcare background at all. So when they brought me in for the day to interview with 5 people, when I had an opportunity to meet with the CEO, the founder of the company, I just asked him a very point blank question. I said, "Are you happy with the growth that you're currently experiencing?" He said, "Yeah, no." He says, "I'd like to grow faster." And so I said, "Well, if that's the case, then I think we can have a really good conversation here because I come from industries that are 15 years ahead of your industry." And I said, "I've come from IT, telecom, from software, and from a marketing standpoint, we're doing things that you guys haven't even touched." And that really separated me from everybody else they were interviewing with. My what the hell approach to job search is pretty unorthodox. I've got 13 of these what the hell moves. I've created this 3-hour workshop recording that's available on the website. The premise is, what the hell do you have to lose by doing things that other job seekers aren't doing? You got to stand out. It's real easy to blend in. And people that blend in don't get job offers. You've got to be able to do things that create that visibility and the engagement that you don't get when you simply apply to online ads. There's more people applying today to positions even than when COVID was going on. In many ways, this market today is tougher than what we experienced 4 and 5 years ago. So all the more reason why you've got to have a marketing engine behind what you're doing. These are the 8 ways in which I believe can help you to shorten your search. I've implemented every one of these myself on multiple occasions. I've had many people that I've coached that have done several of these, and they've made a difference. So I encourage you to take them seriously. Couple quick things as reminders. The next event will be in 4 weeks from today, and this is going to be on 7 job search game changers. Go ahead and register for it. I'll be sending out an email to all of you probably tomorrow, letting you know the link where you can go ahead and register, and I hope you'll join us. I am going, since I am recording this, I'm going to make the recording available to each of you. I'll put it up on my YouTube channel. If you haven't joined NSCNG, go to our website and take advantage of the free membership. If you're not yet connected with me on LinkedIn, please send me an invitation. Tell me you attended the session, and I'll accept your invitation and give you access to 30,000 LinkedIn connections. Join our LinkedIn group. It's a great, safe place to interact with other members. Check out my videos and podcast interviews under the About section of the website. The next event, all of the resources that are available in the form of recordings. And of course, the coaching is the biggest piece of what I do. I have coaching packages and one-on-one custom coaching that I can tailor to whatever your needs might be. If this is something of interest to you, please feel free to send me an email. Send it to martygilbert1@gmail.com, and we'll have a quick exploratory conversation. So with that in mind, again, I appreciate you taking part of your day to join us. I know the job search can be, a very stressful time. There are many things, though, that are still in your control, and it's up to you to take advantage of them. So with that in mind, again, thank you for taking part of your day to join us, and I wish you all the best in your job search. Take care.